A very good evening to one and all present here. My name is Dipshika Mukherjee, and I'm an Associate Counsel at IMC Hyderabad. Today, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all for this session. The audience today varies from students to advocates to seasoned mediators. IMC Hyderabad was established as a public charitable trust, authored by the then Chief Justice of India, Justice N.V. Ramana. We here at IMC Hyderabad are envisioned to create India into a hub of arbitration and mediation and to help foster the growth of businesses in India. We have today with us Mr. Aloysius Goh, who is the founder and CEO of Sage Mediation Limited. Mr. Goh has served as the CEO and Registrar of Singapore International Mediation Center. I'm immensely delighted to welcome him today on behalf of IMC Hyderabad. The discuss-
Yes, hi. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you everyone for making time to be here to listen. Yeah, it's been a hectic June for me, and it's been a hectic day. I actually just arrived at 1 a.m. This morning, back from a family vacation, and had to immediately rush into the office, partly to prepare for this. But more because next week is going to be a busy week of quite a number of mediations to look at, and I'm sure it has been hectic for all of you as well, and I'm really glad that we are making time for each other to listen and learn together. Dipshika, you want to take the lead?
I now request our Registrar, Mr. Tariq Khan, to deliver the welcome address for this session. Is muted. Sir, you're muted. Give me a second.
Thank you very much. I'm so sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. Thank you, Aloysius. We are very, very happy to have you here. And I'm so sorry, I got a little late in joining, but we are all very excited to hear from you, leading expert in mediation, and especially, now that mediation is picking up in India, and especially because there's a discussion about the law coming in. So there's a lot of excitement, and many of us are quite excited to hear from you that what is the best way to make a career in mediation. Because I would like to tell you, I'm very happy to share that last month we did an India Mediation Day, where we were here with Singapore International Mediation Center. There was a 2-day training where chairperson and others were present, and then it was followed by India Mediation Day. But we look forward to hosting you in person as well, and we are quite excited. And hopefully, I'll get to see you in Singapore when I come for the convention week. But thank you once again very, very much for taking out the time. And over to you. And I will not take much time because people are excited to hear you, not me. So thank you once again, Aloysius. It's lovely meeting you virtually.
Thank you, Tariq, Mr. Khan. Thank you so much for the welcome. Yep.
So the discussion for the day is on unlocking the potential of mediation, seeking an empowering and transformative mediation community. We will be having the format as a question-answer session, where I'll be putting up questions through this presentation, and I expect Mr. Aloysius Goh to really answer the questions and provide us with his expert insights.
I'll do my best. I know that the session is being recorded. I will try my best also to be politically correct. It's not my strongest forte, but I trust you to use the recordings and edit it accordingly if I say anything wrong.
So the first question for the day is, what is the scope for mediation practice and how prospective is the career option in India as well as abroad?
So thank you for the question, and I'm going to do a bit of an introduction to everything, even as I try to answer this. The the obvious reality is that when you ask this of me as a mediator, I'm going to give you a very optimistic picture. If you ask this of arbitrators and seasoned litigators, they are not going to get. You're not going to get the same answer as what you get from me. But let's take a few steps back. I was thinking of really what I wanted to, at the heart of it, what is the message that I would like everyone to take back? And I thought it's good for me to start with that, and we'll see how we end the session. And I think with the launch of a center like IAMC, it is clear that mediation practice is on a growth path. We are a sunrise industry. Not to say that arbitrators are in sunset, actually far from it. I think that reality that we all need to come to terms with. I think a lot of people who have been concerned about the growing use of mediation and mediation's promotion in the legal circles have looked at dispute resolution and conflict resolution with a very fixed pie and competitive mindset. There is this notion that if one case is mediated, that is going to be less work for litigators and arbitrators. But I don't think that is the case at all. I was also just in India, actually very close to the India Mediation Day. I had friends who had told me about it, and it's one reason why I couldn't go. I was doing a mediators training and accreditation in Delhi in end April. And I know at the end of the training, not by my design, there was an article that was published because one of your Supreme Court judges came out to say that even if we just took the number of cases that were currently in the India courts, it would take 300 years, more than 300 years, for all those cases to be cleared, not to count new cases that are still coming in every day. The fact is that there is more than enough work for anyone in dispute resolution. And mediation and arbitration and litigation, they are not competitive mechanisms. In fact, what we have seen, not just in Singapore, but in any city that has modernized and positioned itself as a dispute resolution hub, and I'm looking at Sydney. I just came back from Tokyo. I was speaking to the president of the Japan Arbitrators Association. I visited London, Seoul. I was even talking to Tashkent, the city of Uzbekistan, and in Colombo with Sri Lanka, where mediation has grown, arbitration has also grown, because disputes are aplenty. And what clients are looking out for is sophistication. It's practitioners who can arbitrate and can mediate well, right? You increasingly, you will, I mean, with India and the mediation bill about to be translated into law, to be passed into law, you will get corporate clients asking you, look, if we have to go for mediation, is it, am I just paying you to go through the motion, or is this, do you know how to make it work so that we don't waste time? So it is happening. In fact, at the SIMC, at the Singapore International Mediation Center, I think India is one of its biggest markets, which is why the SIMC chairman personally visited IAMC to conduct the training. I think your future clients, and I'm talking to the lawyers out there, I'm talking to the mediators out there, the Indian companies they are very well aware. Indian business leaders are amongst the most sophisticated and most intelligent business leaders in the world. That's why all of you are, I mean, your prime minister is now being his rock star self in the US. Why? Because nearly every top company in the US is led by an Indian national. Your business leaders are smart. They know how to resolve problems, and they know what it means if they turn problem solving over to the Indian courts. And they're not happy with that, because the world is not waiting for the Indian courts to clear up the backlog of cases. The business world is not waiting for it. The human world is not waiting for it. And I know that the demographic of today's audience is fairly young. I think for me, when I look back on my own path, I'm not going to pretend to be old. Though I have been told that I look younger than I actually am, and I'm not going to tell you my age. You can all think that I'm 18, and I think that works for me. I was a genius at mediation. I started mediating at 6, and that's how I'm 18 now. But anyway, the point then, yeah, Deepshika, don't say anything. Just yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you. So anyway, the what was I going to say? Yeah, so it takes time to build up the skills and the career option, but compared to where India was even 3 or 4 years ago, mediation today is much more viable. 3 or 4 years ago, I think if you told anyone that the parliament is going to look at an India mediation bill, 99% of lawyers and business community leaders, if they know what mediation is, will react cynically. And most don't even know what mediation is. But today, it is a buzzword. Imagine what is going to happen in another 3 or 4 years. So that is in India. I think for those of you who look at shaping mediation as a 5-year plan. Okay, as a 5-year plan. That's first advice to all of you. A 5-year plan, because you don't want to start only when the bill has been passed, because then you'll be behind the curve. You want to be ready to take off, or already running with mediation skills when the law has passed, because that is the way that you seize that advantage. And I'll tell you that is my journey, right? I mean, today I'm an active mediator. I have several cases a week, and my friends look at what I'm doing, and they say, "Wow, Aloysius, you had such foresight. You were prescient. How did you know?" The fact of the matter is, I didn't know. How was I to know when I started 15 years ago that there'll be an ancestral convention? How was I to know that Singapore will one day have a Chief Justice that is supportive of mediation? How did I know that Singapore will have a Mediation Act 15 years ago? I didn't know. I didn't know. Whether there is scope for mediation practice, it is not what is the scope. all of you who are here, it's fairly self-selective. You are likely to be here because you are interested in mediation as a career option. You want to hear me tell you that there's a huge scope for mediation practice. My message to you is, yes, there is huge scope and there is a great career option, but it will not be served to you on a spoon. You have to create your path. And poor Tariq and Dipshika have their work cut out for them in launching a new mediation center, because I have been there and I share with a lot of new mediators. The day I left SIMC to start up on my own, I packed up my stuff. I counted more than 1,000 name cards. I stopped at 1,000. And of the 1,000 name cards, at the point when I left, SIMC had in total, in 3 years, about 100 cases. That's the hit rate, but it's exponential. After that, the next year, it had almost 100 cases in 1 year. But the first few moments when everyone is telling you you can't do it, that there's no scope, but you plow on and create scope and make it a viable career option, that is what happens. If you believe that there is scope, and if you believe that this is a career that you want for yourself, it can happen, but no one will serve it to you on a spoon.
Thank you for your answer, Aloysius. I will now move on to the next question. How to kickstart one's mediation career as a law student? Is there a step-by-step guide for it?
Yes, there is a step-by-step guide for it. It's just that there's about 1 million steps and 10 million different versions to those million steps. It's like the Rubik's Cube, you know. You can solve it in a gazillion different ways. Not that I know how to solve a Rubik's Cube, but I've told that if you watch it on YouTube, you can find many ways to do it. And maybe that's it, you know, to develop your career as a mediator. Maybe you can listen to 1,000 mediators and one of their ways might suit you. But again, not to say that not to try to be overly coy. Again, just sharing from my own experience. I think the first bit from my own experience is you don't need to be a top law student. I didn't get my first class honors. Let me confess that. I struggled through law school. Law school was difficult for me in so many ways. And I think that will resonate for many of you. Of course, there might be some of you, like I had peers in law school who were complete geniuses. They aced every exam. Not many of us love those people, but I know they exist. Right? I was not one of them. I was what I was I like to describe as I sailed through law school because I was a master of the seas. That was generally my grade, C's. And I know what I struggled with on hindsight. I think I joined law school wanting very much to be a steward of justice. I think that was what I piously hoped for when I joined law school. But I think, as many of you know, and some of you are practitioners, you know this even better. Sometimes justice can be very cold. And I think and very illogical. Legal justice can be very cold and very illogical. And I think what sparked was that I was then constantly searching for a way of resolving conflicts that is logical and compassionate. And if I have to advise law students today, and I give this advice to Singapore law students, but I'm quite sure it's similar in India, partly because I've received many applications to be interns with Sage, my company now. I think a lot of law students spend a lot of your vacation time looking for internships in law firms, in mediation firms, in arbitration firms, with the hope that that will give you a better platform when you start your career. I think that you need to do some of that, but you shouldn't spend all your vacations doing internships. My advice, one quarter to a third at most in internships, just so that you realize this is what you really want to do. 1/3 to a quarter of the time, give yourself a break. Law school sucks. It's very intense. It's very heavy. Humanly, we all need a break. Take a break, right? And when I say take a break, I mean do something that gives you life and makes you happy. All right. So that's it. And so that last 1/3 and 1/4 of the time, go do something that you can't usually do. Explore, right? Go work as a waiter or a waitress. I mean, for me, one of the things which I did, my first venture into India, was actually to spend some time in Calcutta, because I'm Catholic, and I had read about Mother Teresa, and I said I want to see what is the spirit of Mother Teresa, and that's what I did. I went there, and I know that the poverty that Mother Teresa has surfaced in India is not India, in the same way that I know that the backlog of cases in the Indian courts is not India either, right? But my point is, and I know this is a long answer to this question, to be a good mediator, to kickstart your ability to mediate in law school, keep doing things which hone your human and compassionate side. Because law school all over the world is not focused enough on that. Law school is all over the world, be it civil law or common law, sets out to give law students and law graduates a binary mindset, a win-loss mindset. And it is very easy to finish 4 years sucked into looking at the world purely from that filter, if you don't actively cultivate and nourish the compassionate side of your soul. Do that and explore life beyond the legal circles. And that will help you very much as a mediator. I mean, I am an extreme example, right? So you don't need to follow this extreme example, just so that I don't know whether Dipshika has probably done enough of a private investigator's due diligence on my background, but I finished law school and I kind of decided I didn't want to be a lawyer. no-brainer, given how much I've described my experience in law school. I joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I was a diplomat. And then I searched for my soul. I spent a year in a French monastery. It was done in French and it was a rule of silence. I left that. I worked in my parents' food manufacturing factory. Did that for a few years. I did my Masters of Law because I see that that's the next question. And then decided, okay, maybe I should use all the time I spent in universities to some use. I served with the Ministry of Health and I served with the Ministry of Education. First as legal counsel to hospitals, then as general counsel to a university. And then I was approached to set up the Singapore International Mediation Center. Today I have my own mediation practice and I have a kindergarten on the side. I don't expect all of you to join the foreign affairs, to run hospitals and universities, and to do all of that, right? In fact, it's probably bad career advice. If your parents, if you ever did this to your parents will probably just say that you heard this from Deepshika and Tariq, not from me, right? But my point is, it's okay to have some degree of diversity if you know how to maximize it. It's okay not to get good grades, but don't use that as a crutch. Use that as a sign to stir you to think harder about what you really want. And then when you are out of it, when you're out of law school, find mediators, find lawyers who are supportive of mediation. Work with them. Work with them, talk to them. Be prepared to pay school fees in working and talking to them. Right? School fees meaning don't expect to earn $1 million. If you're doing this for the money, that is the first sign that mediation is not for you. You will earn way more money in litigation. The other thing that I encourage law students to do is, one, find avenues to serve, to mediate for free. Because as a student, nobody will pay you to do anything. That's to mediate real conflicts. But there are a lot of people in need. What I discourage is joining too many mediation competitions, because I know that is very popular in law schools today. I was approached to coach one of the Singapore universities as a permanent coach, and I asked them, okay, what does that mean? Yeah, no, there's a lot of competitions. We just need someone like you, Aloysius, to help us as a coach. I was like, okay, how many competitions are we talking about? Well, we checked our academic calendar. Just for this academic calendar alone, there are 26 mediation competitions. And I looked at them and I said, you guys need a life. 26 mediation competitions. Don't do that. Please don't do that. Yeah. Get a life, right? Use the mediation skills to serve, because there are people who need help resolving conflicts. And mediators will hire you more because you have used those skills to serve than because you won 5 out of the 26 competitions out there. And there's more than 26. 26 was what I knew of 2 years ago. I think today there's probably 260 mediation competitions. Yeah. Deepshika.
That's very valuable advice, Aloysius. Thank you so much. I'll move on to the next question quickly. Could you please shed light on LLM courses or mediation certifications or mediation accreditations and their value addition, and how can one go about gaining them and from where?
The recognized causes around the world, Harvard has one of the most recognized causes. I think the other one that has been actively creating brand value is Strauss Institute, Pepperdine University. Certainly, even in India, you have a few very good law schools. In Singapore, the National University of Singapore offers a good program. It's where I did my program for my Masters of Law. I think the LLMs are certainly useful for you to deepen your training. The other part of this question was accreditations. And my suggestion to people who are interested to be mediators is you must get your accreditation. But don't get every single accreditation that's out there. I have trained participants and they tell me that I have already gotten my IMI certificate, the International Mediation Institute. That is good for if you want to work in Europe, or for a lot of European clients, because IMI is based in Europe and it's well known in Europe. Then the same person will tell me I'm also certified with GAMS and the AAA, the American Arbitrators Association. Again, GAMS and AAA are great if you are living in America and if your clients are from America. And then they'll tell me, we also have done our training with CEDA, the Center for Dispute Resolution, which is based out of the UK. And I'll also say, well done. If you are living in the UK, go for CEDA, because CEDA is what clients in the UK are looking out for. But if you are in Asia, then the Singapore International Mediation Institute is probably the most recognized Asian standard body. I try very hard to discourage people from signing up for my courses, which lead to CME and IMI, if they tell me that they already have all the badges, because there is no point in accumulating badges. Any one of these badges, IMI, CME, GEMS, or CEDA, are very good badges. Having all of them is a waste of time and money. What you want to do is get one badge strategically. Use your money and time strategically, because this is the place that I want to work. Get one badge and then use that badge to start looking for work. How you get that badge? IMI and CME basically require you to go through 40 hours of training through a recognized training provider. So my company is one of them. There are other companies out there. I don't want to just pitch for my company, but each company designs the training and the tests differently. So for my company, I'm focused on cross-border disputes. So my training is very focused on international and intercultural mediation. I think that my tests are fairly tough. There are other CME training centers who are very much focused on the India mediation landscape, or very much focused just on the Singapore landscape. They are focused more on domestic mediations. So again, you have to study the programs and think for yourself, what kind of mediator do I want to be? Do I see that I just want to focus on the India landscape? Do I want to focus on an international landscape? Then you choose. It's like choosing a school. There are many different Cambridge accredited schools. There are many different IB schools, all leading to the Cambridge cert. You decide which is the school with the right values and the let me reframe that. It's not the right, with values and curriculum that speak to you and that work for you.
Thank you, Aloysius. Moving on to the next question. How do you think you can inculcate skills or communication skills to become a successful mediator, apart from accreditation?
Um, well, you need to listen and you need to talk. That's for a start. I I was going to say you need to spend 1 year in a monastery like I did to learn about nonverbal communication. But of course, and that's it. I mean, even as I kid about it, I do think that it was a beautiful time. If anything, to get in touch with ourselves, right? And I'm a strong believer that you communicate best when you know yourself very well. And having worked with top mediators around the world at SIMC and at SAGE, there are two practices that I have found universal among top mediators from India, from UK, from Africa, from Australia, from Europe, from Singapore. The first practice is hard work, is preparing for mediations. All professional mediators spend a lot of time preparing for every single case. The second quality, though, that I think is what makes them good communicators is that they all keep a journal. Mediators are very sensitive to what is happening in them. They are very sensitive to how what they do impacts other people. Which is why when I spoke with one of my own mentors, and I've got a few, he was very fast to explain, Aloysius, at the international level, mediation is no longer a process. It is not about giving a good opening statement, knowing how to reframe the party's opening statement, knowing how to call private sessions and draft. No. Mediation is first and foremost a mindset. It is knowing how you are being impacted as a mediator and being very conscious of how what you are doing is impacting others. And having that humility to keep being hungry to learn, are my words being interpreted in the way that they are going? And if they are not, is there something I can do to improve? How can I do things better rather than blame the other side for being stubborn? And it's a conscious thing, and it's about being open to feedback. It's about not being sensitive to criticism. Maybe one quick, and I know I'm giving long answers to everything. When I first started out in my mediations, there was a case and I felt very insulted after it, because I worked very hard, settled the case, started at 9:30 a.m., closed the case at 10 p.m. And when the thing ended, the parties gave a feedback to their lawyers, and they said, actually we didn't need Aloysius. We could have done this on our own. And I know this was early on, right? And I was quite upset about it, because I was like, I've worked very hard with all of you, but I have learned to take it with a lot of joy now, because if they think that they could have done it themselves, it means that they didn't detect my secret. They didn't know what I was, the secret buttons that I was managing behind the scenes. And it also means that they now feel empowered to resolve their conflicts on their own without me. And I think that is it. It is not just about whether you communicate well. Are you, as a mediator, able, from that one day that you have with them, are you able to inspire them and shape them without their awareness into better communicators themselves?
That is a very beautiful observation, Aloysius. I think I'll move on to the next question. You just told us that law school was not very fun for you. So, do you think that people from other disciplines become mediators? And if yes, how can they go about?
Go to law school. Okay, no. Um, um, well, yes, yes. Anyone can be a mediator, right? And let me caution about that, right? Firstly, anyone can be a mediator. We are all mediators, right? I have been training students to be mediators, teachers to be mediators, doctors to be mediators. I have been training HR managers to be mediators because in the line of duty, they are mediating. And in future, many of you, even if you're not full-time mediators, if you're just lawyers, you are actually mediation advocates. You need to be mediators as well in heart. But I think the question is, can they become professional mediators? And of course, the answer is yes, still. And we need it. I think increasingly that when I first became a mediator, the doctrine was that you don't need domain expertise. Mediators are just process experts, and Aloysius Goh can mediate disputes in complex aviation matters. I now have realized that Aloysius Goh cannot plunge into a complex aviation law mediation. I now specialize in medical negligence disputes and a variety of corporate and financial disputes. And I do that because I have done a lot of these disputes, and I have dedicated myself to building up some degree of domain expertise in these areas. The people from other disciplines, they still need to go through that 40 hours of training, at least, just to get foundational mediation skills. In India in particular, mediators are often called upon to help draft the settlement agreement. This is not the same outside of India, right? Outside of India, generally the lawyers are told to draft, not the mediators. But if you are in an ecosystem where mediators have to draft the settlement agreement, then those non-lawyer mediators need to at least know what is the DNA of a enforceable contract, and that is some legal knowledge. So they will need to go through at least some basics of contract law in addition to mediation training. Yep.
Thank you, Aloysius. Quickly move on to the next question. What are the criteria to be selected as a mediator after one is done with their mediation accreditations?
Be Singaporean, be male, and you know where I'm going with this. Okay, no. Every case has unique elements, and so this was important to me, and maybe this is more feedback for you and for Tariq when you're running IAMC, because when I was running SIMC, people were wondering, what do I do as registrar? You know, and I must admit, I have worked with a lot of mediation centers that have impressive panels of mediators, and the registrars don't know what to do to manage the impressive panels of mediators. So much so that when parties come and they say, look, Dipshika, you choose for me, a lot of these mediation centers say, well, I don't know. I don't even know what mediation is. I tell you what, let me be fair about this. We'll go by alphabetical order, which is great news if your name is Aloysius. It'll be terrible news if your name is Zach. But it's terrible news for the client, because imagine if those clients have a complex aviation dispute and you chose Aloysius, who's a medical negligence mediator. And we get that a lot in this kind of mediation centers. I have received complaints from doctors. They say that, I don't know why, but the mediation center gave me a mediator who was an architect, and he could not make head or tail out of what we were trying to tell him. I had a case when I co-mediated with a commercial mediator, top-notch corporate shareholding commercial mediator. Probably the best, one of the best in Singapore. Medical negligence dispute. Patient suffered a stroke that happened because doctor hit a nerve in a day surgery. It was meant as a day surgery, but the doctor hit a nerve. And she suffered a stroke. She emerged with full paralysis on her right side. She came for the mediation and she shared, you know, this has devastated me. I had a job as a managing consultant. I lost that. She was earning more than $500,000 US a year. She said, I lost that job. But you know what pains me the most? What pains me the most is that before the surgery, I was going to carry my first grandchild, and I was really looking forward to it. But because of you, and she pointed to the doctor, I can't do that anymore. You've taken away my rights and ability to be a grandmother. I can't carry my grandchild. How do you compensate me for that? And she broke down in tears. My co-mediator, and I was a mentee then, this was a senior corporate co-mediator, listened to all of this, looked at her, and said, ma'am, thank you for sharing all of this. And I think it's useful information. But you know, at the end of it, it's a game of numbers, isn't it? So how much compensation are you actually looking for? Yeah, Dipshika's face is about my expression right now as a co-mediator. It was that kind of green that says, will the earth just open up and swallow me now and pretend that I was never here, right? But you can imagine that the look of sheer horror on everyone's face. And that, to me, was a turning point. And I never forgot that incident. It's been years, but so when I became SIMC CEO and Registrar, I told myself, no, every case you choose as a registrar, as a counsel, you manage the case well. It is your duty as registrar and as mediation center to make sure that you choose the right mediator for the clients. And to do that, you need to know every mediator on your panel very well. And if you are a mediator, you need to make sure that the registrar knows you well and knows the kind of cases that you can manage and knows your style as a mediator. Because different parties need different styles, right? There is no linear approach. We teach you a linear approach because that's how we need to teach. It's like teaching you how to swim and how to drive. But the moment you start driving, there are small roads and there are expressways and you drive differently. It's the same for mediation. What is the criteria? White hair, gender, they don't matter that much. Domain expertise, no. There are some cases where a young mediator is extremely suitable. There are many cases where you need someone with seniority and with social standing. There are some, I now get a lot of cases where, because I'm a mediation center as well as a mediator, I propose retired judges and they say, no, we particularly don't want retired judges. We need a problem solver who will listen and manage the emotions. Not to say that judges are bad at that, in case there are judges on this, right? But they want someone who will not instinctively evaluate the case. So each case, its own criteria. What we need to do as mediators is to be fairly clear what is the approach that you are going to subscribe to, and then make it known to the mediation centers so that the mediation centers can match you to the right cases, because you also don't want to get a case that you cannot cope with. But accreditation is important. The right accreditation is important. And I think certainly some experience, both in dispute resolution, be it as a lawyer or a mediator or as an arbitrator, that helps. Even in your line of work as a HR manager, I think that helps. It's what you make of your life experiences. I hope that didn't make your work too difficult, Dipshika. But yeah.
No. Thank you, Aloysius. The next question for you is, how does it land as an early career mediator in mediation? And I would love to know your story, how you got your first client.
Number one, don't work for money. When I train mediators, one of my last lecture to them, and I'm giving away the ending to some of you. I know some of you want to be trained, but there are two funnels. The first funnel is where the base of the funnel, the broadest funnel, is how many cases. How many cases are less than, and I always forget the conversion, but let's just use less than 100,000 Singapore dollars. Right? Yeah, maybe you can let me share screen, but it's okay. No, let me just use my hands. Don't worry. So how many cases are less than $100,000? And I'll tell you, there's tons. There's more of those cases. I mean, with India, you are probably looking at 100 million of those cases a year. You go up to the next tier, 100,000 to 1 million, and maybe you have 500,000 of those cases. You go up to 10 million, 1 million to 10 million Singapore dollars, and maybe you have 100,000 of those cases. Above 10 million, you maybe have about 10,000 of those cases. So don't aim for the 10,000. Aim for the bulk of cases where there's more than 1 million of those cases and there's not enough mediators to go around. Why? Because those are also the disputes. Many of those, number one, many of those disputants are rich. The rich people in the world count every penny, and that's how they became rich. Number two is, many of those people are also people who are not rich. And they are the people who don't have access to justice because going for arbitration or litigation is too costly, both in terms of legal fees and in terms of the structural injustice. They don't have the time to keep going in and out of court. They are the employees. They don't have time to keep being called as witnesses, or they can't hunt for witnesses. They need help. But those kind of cases, they can't pay you. I mean, even today, I'm not very expensive as a mediator. Singapore mediators, senior mediators, they are earning maybe about 10,000 US a day. I'm not there. I'm not there, far from it. But I earn enough to pay my bills. I earn enough to pay my colleagues. Don't work for money. Put yourself out there, talk to lawyers, tell them, I'm not working for money. You have clients who need help. Let me help. Let me help as a mediator. So you have to knock on doors. Like I said, 1,000 name cards, 900 rejections. Don't be defeated by that. After that, the cases will come. Talk to mediators, and there are a lot of good mediators in India. Volunteer in the courts. Push yourself to the registry. Tell Dipshika now, I'll buy you coffee every other day. Please assign cases to me. Tell Tariq, right? Don't bribe them. I'm not encouraging bribes, right? But at least make your passion known. And one, it makes you visible. Two, it helps your skills. Today, what gets me my mediation cases, I realize it is not the fact that I knocked on 1,000 doors. I'm going to be slightly immodest about this, right? I think what allows me to practice professionally as a mediator today is competence. It's because you cannot be all heart as well. You cannot be just passionate but incompetent. There are a lot of mediators like that. You need to be competent, but this competence that I have acquired, I was not born with it. I acquired it by working for free over many cases, by reflecting on what went right and what went wrong in those early free cases, and by continuing to reflect. And that's why I say among the top 1% of mediators, keeping a journal is must, because that's how they stay ahead of the game. They keep reflecting and practicing. It's the same in sports. For those of you who have read all the leadership and books, all the Malcolm Gladwell books, social behavioral books, Good to Great, 10,000 hours of practice. This is non-court time, right? The time when you're not competing, the time when you're not in a mediation, you're still practicing. You're not prepared to put in that 10,000 hours of continual practice, you will not have a career as a mediator because you're not good enough. Full stop. Yep.
Hello, Aloysius. Next question for you is, what edge has mediation got over arbitration, and what is the difference between commercial mediation and mediation in personal disputes?
Well, sensitive question because I know there are arbitrators out there. Again, I really don't like to put these two as binary. There are definitely advantages that one has over the other. Biggest advantages that mediation has is cost, it's innovativeness, right? There are many outcomes that you can get by parties' agreement that you can't get from an arbitral award. There are many things the arbitrator cannot order. One example, I had to mediate a case in where a girl drowned in a public pool. 4-year-old girl. She was having swimming lessons. And she drowned during the swimming lesson. So mother sued the swimming instructor as well as the pool operators because she says the lifeguards should have been alert. The defense filed by the instructor and the lifeguards through their insurers was that, well, I'm sorry, but Mom, you were there during the swimming lesson. You are contributorily negligent. And so whatever damages we need to pay, we shouldn't be 100% liable. You can imagine how the mother felt reading that kind of defense. Is it wrong? Legally, it is not wrong. The lawyers were doing their job to file this defense. And that is sometimes the difficulty of your work as a lawyer. Right? Legally, it's not wrong. But my point is, you imagine the kind of pain that the mother was going through. They came for mediation, and we sat down. I spoke to the lifeguard, I spoke to the swimming instructor, and I spoke to the mother. And I asked them, have you guys sat down to speak since papers were filed, since the writ was filed? I said, no, lawyers don't allow us to speak to each other because they said it will compromise the legal strategy. I said, well, tell me what's been going through your minds. And the instructor said, I was the one that pulled her out of the water. I was the one that gave her CPR. I can't look at my children the same way since that incident. I've been feeling suicidal myself. I've been wanting to talk to the mother to apologize, but my lawyers say I can't do it. And it's eaten at me, it's eaten at my soul. I don't know what to do. I've got no money to pay. I'm just a swimming instructor. I don't know what to do. And I spoke to the mother. This mediation ended at midnight. So it took me a long time to manage the emotional state. And when we ended the mediation, I managed, so we started out in separate rooms. The mother said, I cannot be in the same room as the instructor and the lifeguards. It would traumatize me. We ended the mediation at midnight. I finally managed to get them all to sit in the room. And I got the instructor to tell the mother what he confided in me. And the mother's response was to stand up and walk over to the instructor and hold his hand and say, I forgive you. I know what it means to lose a family member. Don't do this to your daughter. Cherish your life. Live well. You will never get such an outcome in an arbitration. Never. That is that edge that mediation has. That I couldn't get in law school. I could get that the binary mechanism helps us to be stewards of justice. But I think I hungered for something more. I wanted to be a steward of justice and of human compassion. And I think that is the edge that mediation has over arbitration or litigation. What is the difference between commercial mediation and mediation in personal disputes? It is as if commercial mediations don't involve people. So I think this is a trick question, Dipshika. When you come down to it, there's very little difference. And let me go slightly further. There is very little difference between commercial mediations in India, between Indian parties, and commercial mediations in Singapore between Singaporean parties, in Australia between Australian parties. I know this because I've co-mediated with Indian mediators and with Australian mediators, and they say, you know, Aloysius, what strikes me is that human nature is all the same. We see exactly the same kind of disputes, the same way that people behave. Slight cultural differences, but the psyche is the same. It's the same, Dipshika. I think that the difference is artificial. Yeah.
Thank you, Aloysius.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next question. What is mediation advocacy?
Lawyers, advocates in mediation. So mediation advocacy is a term. I mean, I was part of the IMI mediation advocacy task force. We were brainstorming what is mediation advocacy, and we spent a lot of time arguing even over nomenclature. Is there such a thing as a mediation advocate? Because many of us felt that all advocates should be mediation advocates. Whether you're a litigator, you must still be a mediation advocate because it's part of the process of dispute resolution. But essentially, advocacy in mediation or mediation advocacy is how lawyers help parties to get a settlement in a mediation. And that, to me, involves three parts. First part is preparation, getting your client ready, preparing the strategy with your client, what documents to exchange, who to speak, what mediator to engage. The second part is the actual representation and assistance during the mediation itself. Because the client is not going to be as familiar with mediation as you are, so you do join the client during the mediation. You help the client in brainstorming, in thinking through the proposals made by the other side, in making sure that the settlement agreement is enforceable. The third stage is after the mediation has ended. If it was successful, you need to make sure that the other side performs the obligations and your client performs the obligations, right? If it is unsuccessful, you need to be helping. Unsuccessful meaning you didn't settle on the day. You need to work with the client to see, how do I build on the momentum to continue to try and get a settlement? How do I use that mediation to narrow the number of issues going for litigation? How do I position the dispute for possibly a second round of mediation? I must admit, I found this to be very counterintuitive when I spoke to a lot of lawyers in India. Because this can look like it causes a drop in income for lawyers. I know that for a lot of law firms, and maybe this is not unique to India, it's much worse in Pakistan and Sri Lanka. And in 10 years ago in Singapore, it was the same. Lawyers specialize in filing a lot of interlocutories and a lot of delay to the whole dispute in order to churn fees. Helping clients get disputes settled seems like a terrible business model for a lawyer. I've heard this from a lot of lawyers, even in Singapore, and I've heard this from a lot of lawyers in India. The world has changed, and it is changing very fast. If you are not a lawyer who knows how to help your clients save dispute costs and lower litigation and dispute risk, chances are your client will look for another lawyer who has that competency. Because there are many lawyers out there now, and there are many international firms who your India corporate clients can turn to, who have that competency.
Thank you once again. The last question for the day is, do you have any tips for young mediators?
I think I've given many tips to everyone who has stayed on and listened until this point. So I'm not going to, I don't have much more to share at this point. I think we still have 15 minutes. Maybe let's use the 15 minutes to take some questions from the floor. But if I have to just summarize, then in terms of that last tip, stay compassionate, stay humble, keep learning, the fact that you are here means you are listening to me until now, means that being a pure litigator and a pure adversarial approach doesn't fully feed your soul. There's something else that you're hungry for. Listen to that hunger and try and see what is it that will make you happy. And see where it goes. It is a good hunger. Any suggested books on mediation? The one that I haven't written. Okay, no. I honestly have not found many that are specific on mediation. I think the essential book is Getting to Yes. Everyone should read it. By Professor Roger Fisher. This is a book on collaborative problem solving. The other book that I like, but not everyone likes, is Beyond Reason by Daniel Shapiro. This is good for those who are curious about the psychology and managing emotions. Right, Daniel Shapiro is a lawyer and clinical psychologist. He apart from academic work, he's engaged as a hostage negotiator as well. I would suggest we just focus on these two books for now, and they are both fairly easy reading. I think they are both about 200 pages, slightly more maybe, but take those two first.
Thank you, Aloysius. For any one of you, I think there is another question in the chat box.
There's two questions. Sorry, Subramaniam, my Latin fails me. What is Audi alter partem?
Is it applicable in mediation?
Explain the Latin so that others who are not as familiar with Latin.
Audi alteram partem, Aloysius says everybody has a right to be heard. So that principle of natural justice, I think, he's referring to.
Yeah, thank you, Tariq. So I part of my training in trying to improve was to do a focused course on trauma victims and whether mediation should be used for cases of abuse, oftentimes sexual, oftentimes parental abuse, because that leads to a lot of trauma. There was a huge push when it was first introduced because of the same principle. And they felt that no, then you're letting potential perpetrators get away with it. And if you mediate such disputes. Let me be clear, I'm not saying criminal activities really shouldn't be mediated. Okay? But as I help a lot of people, patients in medical negligence disputes and a lot of family disputes, what I have come to also realize is that the court system doesn't help these victims of trauma. It is not like it is fairer to these victims of trauma than the mediation system is. In fact, the court system is very, very unfair to victims of trauma, because victims of trauma, one of the clear signs is that they are incoherent and inconsistent. It is part of the effect of the trauma. But when you are incoherent and inconsistent on trial, you will lose the case. And imagine that poor victim having to go through all that time preparing the case, reignite the incidents of abuse and trauma, only to then lose the case again because they couldn't be consistent and coherent. Mediation, on the other hand, provides that avenue where, because of its flexibility, we give people the safe space, the psychologically safe space to talk, to open up. I think that is much more powerful in giving people that right to be heard, which is a big part of why I am doing mediation. I now strongly believe one of the biggest reasons for introducing mediation is access to justice. And our Singapore Chief Justice has come out to say the same thing, that we legal professionals need to recognize that the court system and arbitration alone will not facilitate access to justice. My thoughts on online mediation, I think they will be happening. Technology is here to stay. Online mediation actually allows a lot of people who cannot access mediation to access it. But pure online mediations will always have its shortcomings. I think we are going through a period now where it's being refined. There will be some. I think what we are going to see in the future is that part of the mediation will be online to make it more efficient, but it will not fully replace in-person mediation. But it is not completely flawed. That's my point. But it is not completely perfect. And the technology is still evolving to make it better and better. But in-person will always have its place. Can we contribute virtually in Singapore Mediation Center from India? As a mediator and as a co-mediator, perhaps if we have cases between India and Singapore, between India and somewhere else, I don't see why not. If you're asking, and so let me just call a spade. If you're asking whether can you work with me, can you be my intern virtually without coming to Singapore, I'll tell you the answer is no, because it will not be meaningful. And it will not be as meaningful as you being here to shadow me. And because there's a lot more that happens behind the scenes, not just at the mediation itself. And that's the only way you become a good mediator is when you see what happens behind the scenes. What quality will help to handle the mediation? You have to go through the training, Ray, right? Mr. or Miss Ray, you have to go through the training. There are many qualities that will help you to handle the mediation. Training sessions, usually, minimally, they require 40 hours of training. Most centers, including mine, divide this into 2 parts. So three full days for each part, 8 hours a day. So 24. So it will more than make up to about 40, but it's actually not 24, of course, because if you take away the lunch breaks and all, it's probably more like 3 times 7. So 21 is about 40 hours of training. You cover the mediation process, you cover collaborative problem solving, you cover international mediation, intercultural mediation legislation, a lot of role playing, a lot of role playing. You can't learn how to mediate just by listening to Aloysius drone on. If a couple chooses mediation for reconciliation to avoid separation, do they still have to hire lawyers to assist them in mediation, or can they manage without lawyers? Nishta, it really depends. I mean, it really depends on what kind of lawyers. Singapore lawyers have come a long way. I think now about 30% of our lawyers are actually very helpful, and I'll always encourage clients. I mean, in fact, this morning when I came back, I was helping a friend who's going through divorce, and I told him, let me recommend some of my lawyer friends to him, my family law friends to him, because I know they will help him prepare for a mediation. But if you think that there is a 99% chance that any lawyer you recommend will actually make things worse, as in inflame the dispute, then of course, better not to hire the lawyers. So it depends on whether this lawyer that you want to recommend is someone who you trust to be helpful in getting the conflict amicably resolved. If they want reconciliation, I would generally tell them, come straight to see a mediator first. Yeah.
I think the next question is on for family mediation. Is there a different accreditation required?
Yeah. Generally, the 40 hours is a foundation, and you will know this as well. You know, it's like it's really like driving or swimming. You know, your first 40 hours of lessons will it allow you to swim 50 meters in an Olympic pool? I think the answer is yes. Will it enable you to swim in the sea? No. So to be a family mediator, you do need to do that 40 hours first. And then a lot of people do a further elective on family mediation itself. Is mediation a good solution for civil disputes? Yes, but that's coming from me. Yeah. Can mediations be done without lawyers? Yes, it can. Clients need to be sufficiently sophisticated to help themselves too. Mediator needs to be sufficiently sophisticated to help unrepresented parties. But yes, in fact, a lot of the mediations that I started out with as a volunteer involved laypersons directly without the presence of lawyers. Yeah.
Thank you, Aloysius, for answering the questions. On behalf of IMC Hyderabad, I extend my heartfelt thanks to you for taking time out from your busy schedule to help our budding mediators find their way. To all the audience out there, we hope that you've enjoyed our session. In case of any queries, please reach out to us in the email chat box.
Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Deepshika and Tariq for hosting. Have a good weekend ahead, everyone, and I hope you all don't give up being mediators from the steep climb that I've warned all of you about.
Thank you once again, Aloysius. Great to have you here.
And sorry, and to Tariq and to Deepshika and to all of you, if you do come to Singapore, please do let me know.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Aloysius. It was really nice to hear you, and thank you everyone for attending. And I look forward to our meeting and hosting you in Hyderabad soon.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to log off, all right? Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you, Aloysius.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.